Welcome, welcome, welcome. Well, folks, I got to say, the first couple of days of spring training, pitchers and catchers, it was going well. It was rainbows and sunshine. Alvarez said we have the best lineup in baseball. Carlos Mendoza, Francisco Lindor, everybody speaking to us, making us feel good. Juan Soto coming into camp. Pete Alonso, great stuff, what he said in the press conference. But it couldn't all go right. Frankie Montas looks like we're going to be without, a pretty significant signing over the offseason. Montas looks to be out for at least 6 to 8 weeks of no pitching activity. Just a week and a half of good stuff, good feeling, and then we have our first pitching injury. And you know what? I got to say, the Mets have dealt with many pitching injuries in the last couple of years. Kodai Senga, Quintana. You go back years and years. The Mets seem to always had injuries in spring training. But folks, the good thing about this year and David Stern's team is he's all about depth. You don't like to test depth this early in spring training, but you know what? It gives opportunities to other players. You're going to have internal options. You're going to have external options. And Robert, how you doing? Everybody's going to be talking about Jose Quintana. That's definitely, for sure, going to be the obvious, hands down choice. And if you look at Jose Quintana last year, I was actually surprised when I'm actually surprised he's still a free agent. I'll be honest with you. I'm actually surprised Quintana is still a free agent because last year he had a pretty decent season. At age 35, the guy had almost a 3 WAR, 3.75 ERA. He went 10-10, and down the stretch, he was freaking phenomenal. So, what has been the thing with Jose Quintana? The last 2 years, Quintana made $13 million each of the last 2 years. So, money is that's always an issue, folks. It is always an issue. He's going to be 36 years old. Teams wondering how much left does he have in the tank? Did he look good against the Dodgers? No. But he's a guy that, you would definitely kick the tires on. But still, is David Stearns going to look at other options? What are the other options? Obviously, we have internal options like Griffin Canning, Paul Blackburn. You could go to some of the young kids, which I think is going to be less likely. Brandon Sprout would have to wow you in spring training. I don't think that's going to be an option. I think it's going to really be, if the Mets don't go after Quintana, this is Tyler McGill's time to shine. The kid, it's time to put up or shut up for Mr. Tyler McGill. He's going to have an opportunity. But here's the deal, folks. I'm thinking already, we're a week in spring training. Already we have an injury. And it makes me worry about it. I'm not going to lie. It does make me worry. What's up, Will? It does make me worry because Frankie Montas was supposed to be our guaranteed 150 innings. Guaranteed. I don't expect Montas back until after July. I'm realistic. And then the guy's coming back from an injury, and this is a guy who has traditionally been injured. So can I really count on Montas this year? I don't know. So that's already one pitcher down. You got Kodai Senga coming back from only 5 innings pitched last year. Can I count on him? No. Clay Holmes, he's going to be a starter for the first time in his MLB career. How many innings is he going to eat up? So there's a lot of uncertainties. David Peterson, as nice as he was injured for a good portion of last year. So there are a lot of injuries in our starting rotation. And, even though, we have depth, it just doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good. The good thing is maybe you could look at it like Frankie Montas was the worst starting pitcher. He was probably going to be our number 5. So, he's a guy who is easy to replace. But, at the end of the day, he was a guy who was supposed to eat up innings, and he's not going to be able to eat up innings. And most likely, folks, that $17 million just turned into $34 million, because I don't know how, unless he has a dominant last two months, most likely he's got a player option. He's got to prove himself. He's not going to have a lot of opportunity to prove himself this year. Now we're going to pay $34 million for, not too much production. So, I wasn't so fascinated. I didn't really love the contract. If you go, Dominant Mets Nation, put Frankie Montas, you're going to hear my thoughts and opinions when we signed Frankie Montas, and I wasn't over the moon. I was not over the moon, but it is what it is. It is what it is right now. Yep, Stearns. Look. So I have confidence. For sure, I have confidence. And the Mets have many plans right now on the table. Do I expect them to go after those top echelon options like a Dylan Cease, a Michael King, a Luis Castillo? I think those are the type of deals that have to come to the Mets. Like right now, when the Mets, are down a starting pitcher, teams are going to be salivating. Okay, the Mets are going to be a little more desperate. But David Stearns is a guy that does not operate under desperation. So that is not a deal that I could see happening with those type of players. Although you just never know. You just never know. But so let's kind of look at what the options we have right now. Bringing back Jose Quintana, to most people, Mets fans, seems like a no-brainer. Last season, in 31 starts, like I mentioned, the guy had a 3.75 ERA. In August, very shaky. Before August 25th, he had an 8.27 ERA in 4 starts. Then down the stretch, lights out. Guy was lights out. Bringing Quintana back to Queens would be a very easy transition. He knows the organization. He spent the last 2 years with Jeremy Hefner. That cannot be understated. He's really the only free agent starting pitcher on the market, that some would consider bringing back. I have a couple other names here. I'm going to go over that momentarily. But just to stay on Quintana, it just would be a very easy move. At this point, I think it just comes down to money. How much money does the guy want? The Mets talked about a 6-man rotation, and that would have been good because guys like Kodai Senga, it wouldn't put much stress on them. Losing Montas, replacing him with Quintana still gives you that chance for a 6-man rotation. Okay. So Carlos Mendoza obviously provided us with that 6 to 8 week timeline. It's important to note the 6 to 8 week timeline says he's not going to be able to pitch. So once he's being able to pitch and throw, he's going to have to ramp up. So right now, 6 to 8 weeks is just healing time. Then he's got to ramp it up. So folks, that's where I get my timeline. It's at least going to be 3 months, at least 3 months. So, right now we're in mid to late February. So that's March, April, May. So probably sometime in June, the earliest. Okay, so like I said, you got guys like Tyler McGill, Blackburn, Griffin Canning, and we'll see what happens. Other guys that I kind of went through who was left on the free agent market, and there were 2 other guys that I circled. Not much talent on the free agent list in terms of the pitching department. Nick Pivetta was probably the most talented pitcher. He was obviously signed last week by the Padres, but Nick Pivetta, despite him having talent, he also had that compensation pick attached to him. So that's why the Mets, they weren't so over the moon on a Nick Pivetta. Okay, so the 2 guys that I have on my list here, besides Jose Quintana, and I'm not saying they're better than Quintana, I'm just saying they're other options and they're cheaper options. One of the guys that I have on the list is Spencer Turnbull. Turnbull. Okay, probably butchering that name, but Spencer Turnbull last year he pitched very, very, very good with the Phillies. In fact, let me get his overall numbers because when I was actually looking back to how he pitched, I was actually a bit kind of surprised how good he did. Last year, again, he was pitching with the Phillies, and in 2024, his overall numbers, he was in 17 games, he pitched to a 2.65 ERA, folks. He was 3-0, pitched a total of 55 innings. I'm going to tell you why it was 55 innings. And he did very, very well. He had almost a 10 strikeouts per 9 innings. You know, like I said, 2.65 ERA, a 1.04 whip. He really turned heads in the Philadelphia Phillies department last year. And in fact, the San Diego Padres, they were determining if they were going to sign either Pivetta or Turnbull. So Turnbull was an option for the Padres. Padres decided to go with Pivetta. But as of when I checked a little while back, Turnbull is still available, and that would be a guy that I'm not saying is better than Quintana, but he is cheaper. He is certainly cheaper than a Quintana. So that could be an option. And, you know, we have to see which way David Stearns decides to go. But just so you know, Spencer Turnbull, you're probably wondering, why did he only pitch 55 innings if he was that good? So in April, Taijuan Walker, he was out with injury. So that gave Spencer Turnbull the opportunity to be a starting pitcher. In April, Turnbull basically dominated, had a couple scoreless games. His first 2 starts, he pitched 2 gems in a row. Then he pitched another 2 or 3 very decent starts. The end of April, you know, he did great. He did great. But once Taijuan Walker came back, Turnbull went to the bullpen. When he went to the bullpen, he continued to do well. And the reason why his season ended up not, going the way he wanted it to go is that he actually had a right lat strain and he missed most of his time from July on. So he is coming off an injury, hence he would be cheaper. But he's also a guy that if, you need him for a good 2-3 months to eat up innings while Montas comes back, if you feel he has that ability, you could get Turnbull for $2 million. $2 million. So, I know Quintana is the hands down no-brainer, but it seems like he would cost 2 or 3 times the price of Turnbull. And I could see a guy like David Stearns being like, okay, let's see how we can work with Turnbull, put him in our pitching lab. And, it might be something that they see as better value. Actually, certainly would see as better value. But again, that really depends on what Quintana's looking for. And I actually have the game logs last year. In April, Turnbull, his first game, 5 innings, 5 scoreless innings. He gave up 3 hits, 7 strikeouts, 0 earned runs against the Reds. Second game, what did he pitch? 6 innings, 6 strikeouts, again, 0 earned runs given up. In fact, all of April, he only gave up 5 earned runs in 6 starts. So the guy was lights out in April. He was 2-0 in those 6 starts to a 1.39 ERA. So it might be a guy you like. And I did actually look at his repertoire, and he actually seems like a guy that David Stearns would like in terms of his stuff. And I'll tell you why. And folks, I just want to say thank you again for continuing to watch. I appreciate all the commentary. I really do appreciate everything. Again, throughout the videos, continue to hit the like button, whether you're watching now or on replay. And later on, we will be talking about Pete Alonso because, as you know, Pete Alonso, I could tell. I think he's going to have a very magical year. But what he said in the press conference today actually really kind of made me feel that much better about Pete Alonso. So stay tuned for that. Okay, getting back to Spencer. He's a ground ball pitcher. Last year, he had almost an 80% ground ball rate, and the Mets traditionally have been looking for ground ball pitchers. Spencer has a sweeper, a sinker, a curveball, a changeup, a slider, and a four-seam fastball. So he's got a six-pitch mix. So he's got pretty decent stuff in terms of the breaking ball. The breaking ball run value was in the 97th percentile last year. Very, very good, folks. Obviously, that's top tier right there. So he's got some pretty good pitches, pretty good tools for the pitching lab to work with. And again, cheap. So two external options are number one, Quintana, number two, Spencer Turnbull. And the other guy that I saw was available, and if the guy signs, obviously by the time you watch this, I apologize. But the other guy that I highlighted off the list, and I don't think he signed yet, but that was Mr. Lance Lynn. So Lance Lynn, he's going to be 38 years old. So this would be a pretty, he's a guy that doesn't have youth on his side anymore, but he is a guy with a lot of experience. He's a guy coming off, a pretty decent season. Nothing bad, nothing crazy. So he's also a guy with a lot of experience and a guy maybe willing to take a lesser role, willing to take a cheaper contract, and maybe he has something left in the tank. Truth be told, I don't think you're gonna find a better free agent fit than Quintana, and that's mostly because all of the better free agents were already signed, and there's not much talent left there. So those are the free agents that I think are at the top of the list. Outside the organization, again, I don't really see a Dylan Cease trade at the moment. I don't see a Michael King trade. I don't see a Luis Castillo trade at the moment. May happen down the road, but not right now. I mean, the most likely scenario, again, you got guys like McGill, Canning, and Blackburn. What's up, Tim? You're right. Should Brandon Sproat take Frankie Montas's place in the rotation? I mean, ideally, I think that is an option that all fans would like. I mean, you would like Brandon Sproat to go out, win the job, dominate spring training, and have this kid start his career as a New York Met, be lights out. I think that would be a great situation. I just don't think it's going to happen. He's not going to jump over all of the established veterans like Tyler McGill unless he just dominates. So I would say it's highly unlikely. Just like last year, Christian Scott, all of the veterans, they got their opportunity in the beginning of last year. Had guys like Adrian Hauser, Tyler McGill. Those guys made the rotation, and then Christian Scott continued to prove himself. The thing about Brandon Sproat that we all have to remember is at the end of last year, as good as he did in single A, as good as he did in double A, he did bad in triple A. I'm pretty sure the New York Mets want Brandon Sproat to be successful at the triple A level first before they end up promoting him. If you go look at those numbers, Tim, his last couple starts in AAA at the end of last year, not so good. The fastball that was dominating at the double A and the single A level, they were hitting it at AAA. It's these guys, they go through phases. Over this offseason, Sproat did work on that fastball. So, the thing that wasn't successful at AAA, he did tweak it. He did work on it. So I think the Mets want to see him have success at the AAA level, give other established players like Tyler McGill, other players that they invested money in. They invested contracts in Griffin Canning, all these other guys. They might not be great. They might not be world beaters, but they are options right now ahead of Sproat. Sproat, I think he's going to have an opportunity. It's just probably not going to be in the beginning of April. And I'm basing this on how David Stearns ran the organization last year. I mean, you got to remember, Mark Vientos, the young rookie, wasn't on the team in the beginning of last season. Christian Scott, same thing. These guys went to the minor leagues first, and the veterans, they had first crack. So that's what I expect. Chad, what's up? Good afternoon. It's just for the record, it's 2:00 in the morning almost, but I could, see people replaying this in the afternoon, so it doesn't really matter. That being said. And Will, great point, as always. Love the way Stearns moves in the silence, doesn't show panic. And, that's a good point. That's a great point because in December, when we got Soto and everybody wanted Stearns to get starting pitchers, get Alonso, get everybody all at the same time, Stearns was showing everybody he goes at his own pace. He's not going to be pressured by the media. He's not going to be pressured by us, the fans, no matter how we yell, scream. They don't give a damn. They're going to go at their own pace. And honestly, I like that. I like that because why would you want to be pressured by external forces? They know the internal plan. They know what their goals are, and they're going to go at their pace. And not just, Will, that reminds me to what Pete Alonso said at his press conference. And they were asking Pete about, what the big meeting, what was said, and what impacted him to wanting to be a Met. And he basically said, I got to hear the internal, and the terminology he used was, the terminology Pete Alonso used, he said that they showed me a peek behind the curtains, So Pete Alonso started understanding why they were offering him these type of contracts. And David Stern said, all right, you know what? You want to know the finances? You want to know our long-term goals? This is why we're offering you the contract. And Pete Alonso literally gave the best of the best answers. As bad of answers that he gave all throughout 2024, and some of them felt a little selfish to me. He was so selfless in that press conference. He sounded like a leader, and that makes me so hopeful for how this guy is going to produce. He literally said, I understand why I didn't get a long-term contract. I had a down 2 years in a row. And, that was tough for him to say before he got the contract, because why would you want to diminish your season, just still trying to get as much money as possible? But now he's like, all right, now I can be realistic. Now I can kind of look at the big picture. And I was just ultra impressed at Mr. Pete Alonso and how he conducted himself in the press conference. And I was also kind of ultra impressed at how Juan Soto and Alonso kind of had a connection. When you listen to the Juan Soto presser, he actually, and they asked him, did you expect the Mets to sign Pete Alonso? And emphatically, he said yes. So behind the scenes, even though the Mets went through their stages and it seemed like, oh, maybe Pete Alonso's going to Toronto. Oh, maybe Steve Cohen doesn't want him. Behind the scenes, Soto wanted Pete Alonso. The Mets wanted Pete Alonso, and Pete Alonso wanted the Mets. So, and Pete Alonso opened up the press conference by saying, don't believe what you hear in the media. There were so many news articles that made you believe Pete Alonso didn't want to be a Met, and so many articles that made you believe that the Mets didn't want Pete Alonso. And the fact that Pete Alonso admitted that he didn't have the greatest season just tells me that the guy is going to be motivated now that he knows what he needs to do, and he's reconciled with it. He's actually said it publicly. He knows he has to get better. And in my opinion, looking at Pete Alonso conducting himself, saying the right things, the guy was looking fit, looking sharp. I like what I see. And it just makes me, as a Mets fan and as a Mets content creator, it makes me ultra excited to see this guy and how he produces with Juan Soto in the lineup. It's just super exciting. Mr. Delight, how is the starting pitching looking now? I mean, the starting pitching looks basically the same, minus Frankie Montas. So, you started off with Sean Manaea, Kodai Senga, and I've said there are there are guys who've had injuries. So you got Manaea, you got Senga, you got Clay Holmes, you got Peterson, and now you got that fifth spot open. I think Tyler McGill automatically slots in there, but they're going to be fighting for that role. You got him fighting with Griffin Canning. You got him fighting with Blackburn. And then you got some of the kids. If some of the kids wow you, you got Blake Tidwell. You got Brandon Sproat. You got maybe Dominic Hamill. Those guys will be fighting too. That they stand a longer shot to win, as I explained earlier. And then you got the outside candidates like Jose Quintana. You have other candidates, in my opinion, Lance Lynn, another candidate that, he was played for the Phillies last year, Spencer Turnbull. Those are other free agents still out there. And then if the Mets do decide to make a trade, obviously, you have those high-level trade options, Michael King, Dylan Cease, Luis Castillo, although I think that is way down on the list of where a guy like David Stearns would turn at this point in the season. But here's the thing about making a trade. I'd rather make a trade while you still have a bunch of leverage, because like right now the Mets still have a lot of depth option. God forbid Senga gets injured. God forbid Peterson gets injured, and you have Montas injured. Now you're going to have to make a trade, and now you're going to be making a trade when you do not have any leverage. So, that would be the only, even though making a trade seems lower on the list, that could be the only reasoning for being ultra aggressive right now and possibly making a trade. I'm still sour on Pete. Now he has to shut up and put up. Yeah, the thing is, by him admitting what he needs to do, I'm more confident that he's going to produce. Last year, Will, the thing I didn't like about Pete was he just wasn't being realistic. He was saying he was an all-star, saying he's set to hit 40 home runs, and he was saying that he was happy with his season despite having a down season. And I'm not saying it was horrendous, but on Pete Alonso's standards, it wasn't good. McGill and Blackburn will step up. I mean, McGill and Blackburn, I have a little more confidence in McGill. Blackburn, he had like one or two good starts. I got to see way more from him. Our starting pitching is a year away. I like our young starters. Yeah, no, I love our young starters. I think we have a whole slew of young starters. And we didn't even go through a lot of them. I mean, I didn't mention Jonah Tong. I mean, he was a guy who played, he went up to Double-A last year. I mean, there are a whole slew of guys that we have. I mean, the Mets have been doing a really good job in the last couple of years of kind of, beefing up their pitchers. I mean, other guys, you got Nolan McLean. He's a guy I think with the Mets, the way they develop pitchers these days, he's a guy that their pitching lab and their analytics love. So he's a guy with potential right there as well. Jonathan Santucci, who they drafted recently. That's another guy. So I mean, they got guys. They really got guys. So I'm excited to see how these guys develop over the year. But I will admit, I do think a lot of these guys are still a year away. A year away. So I think that's a good comment right there. But another thing I do love that a lot of the Mets players, all of the Mets players, they want to come back. Even going back to Sean Mania wanted to come back. Pete Alonso apparently really wanted him to come back. Even guys like Drew Smith. Drew Smith wanted to come back. I mean, and that was good that the Mets gave him an opportunity to rehab from Tommy John. But I just love the fact that everybody wants to come here. Juan Soto, I mean, that's you can't have a bigger endorsement of how the Mets are going in a positive direction than the biggest superstar on the market coming to your franchise. And I know it doesn't hurt offering the guy $800 million, but there were four other offers around that price tag. So you got to give Steve Cohen, Alex Cohen, all the credit right now because we are building something special here. And in my last couple of videos, it might, I compared our situation to the Yankees, and I did this last year, so same thing. But I do really think we're putting ourselves in a different stratosphere. If you look at us compared to the Yankees and in the Mets in the past, and I'll be 100% honest, we've always been a little brother, always. But in the last couple years, my thing is I'm saying we're acting more and more like the big brother in town. Last year was supposed to be a rebuilding year, folks. That was supposed to be a rebuilding year. I said in the beginning of last year, when we got David Stearns, when we were starting to be smart after we sold off all the old pitchers in the 2023 trade deadline, and we started to actually do things different, I said, it's over. We have a baseball genius as the president. You got the richest owner in all of baseball. The whole organization is being transformed. Analytics, scouting, everything is being improved. Steve Cohen's working on the project around Citi Field to, develop a whole entertainment community. I mean, we are doing big things in Queens. We are doing big brother things. This year, we stole Juan Soto away from the New York Yankees. We've been outspending, basically every team except for the Dodgers. And, last year, the season series against the Yankees, I mean, Yankee fans, we need a better season series. I mean, the Mets literally dominated. I think we scored 36 runs to 17. So I'm excited to see I'm excited to see this team this year. I don't think there's going to be many teams that are clearly better than the Mets. I think on any given day, any given series, the Mets have a chance to win, which, if that's the case, that puts you as a team that's going to be close to 100 wins. Now, with that being said, pitching, and more pitching. So you have one injury. You got to make sure that the Mets have a plan A, a plan B, and a plan C. So, one of their plans could be developing some of the kids. Which kids are going to be on the fast track? Is Brandon Sproat? Are we going to fast track him? Are we going to fast track a Jonah Tong? Oh, who are we going to fast track if, God forbid, we can't make a trade? If, God forbid, Tyler McGill can't figure it out? If Griffin Canning and Blackburn, if they can't figure it out? Because at the end of the day, I don't think David Stearns is going to put himself in a position where he's going to be forced to give up a ridiculous package. It's just not what he does. He's not going to get ripped off. So I think we're going to rely on our depth and we're going to rely on the kids, which I'm okay with. I want to see with our organization. I want to see what we have. And for all of you who are wondering, I saw the other article in the New York Post. They said Pete Alonso's wife, Haley, was very excited about Pete Alonso coming back to the Mets. So, obviously you got to make your wife happy. Haley Alonso is excited. So, honestly, I like to hear that. I really do like to hear that. Pete Alonso, I think the guy is going to be in a lot better place. He's going to be in a lot better place mentally, and that's going to cause him to be in a lot better place physically. Last year, you could just tell mentally he was just all over the place. Finally, when we got to the playoffs, he just seemed to relax a bit. I think, the year's over. You're done compiling numbers. 34 home runs is what he ended up with. Not great, but he just seemed to relax in the playoffs. He seemed to use the whole field. He seemed not to expand the strike zone. And if we can get that version of Pete Alonso, I think the sky is the limit for this lineup and this team. But I do want to mention one thing. Francisco Alvarez, he said that thing in the beginning of spring training about the Mets having the best lineup in all of baseball. But I think it was so funny that the reporters, the literally New York reporters, I gotta admit, sometimes are very good. They literally asked that question to every single person and every single person of importance. So Carlos Mendoza got asked that question about, hey, what do you think about Francisco Alvarez saying you guys have the best lineup in baseball? They asked Francisco Lindor. They asked Juan Soto. And every single one of them, in my opinion, they kind of said, hey, you know what? There's a lot of teams that have good lineups. There's a lot of teams we just have to go out and see. So in a way, I guess they were kind of educating the kid that's saying it's good to have confidence, but you don't say that. You don't say that. And I kind of wavered on this. I'm like, well, it's good that the kid is confident in the situation. But then if I look at it from Carlos Mendoza's perspective, 3-4 months down the road, you're in LA, you're in San Diego. Alvarez is 0 for 3. The Boo Birds come out. It's a thing you probably don't need. Obviously, the Mets aren't going 162-0. So that is bound to come back to bite the young kid. And at age 23, why put another thing that could potentially annoy, let's just say annoy the kid and the Mets throughout the season. So I think it was good that the team kind of put their arm around the kid saying, hey, you know what? There are other ways to answer that question. There are other ways to express confidence and excitement. Well, you're right. Pete and McNeil are buddies. They are me type of guys, not team players. Let's hope Pete has seen the light. All right. I'm glad you said that. I'm very glad you said that, Will, because as I was reading this, I'm saying, you know what? Pete has been through a big experience. This has been a big eye-opening experience for Pete Alonso. He literally got to see all of MLB reject him. So I think that experience is so invaluable. So invaluable. It doesn't matter what you think about yourself. It matters what, other teams think about you. And the Mets, and even probably Boris at the end, told him what he needs to do in order for other teams to value him. I think we're going to see it. And McNeil too. McNeil, in the last year or two, he saw his role being greatly diminished. I think these guys are seeing kids like Acuna come up, kids like Jet Williams on their tail. I think these older veterans saw the other side of the business, are seeing the other side of the business. And I think that those guys specifically are going to produce at the highest level that they can. More so Alonso than McNeil. McNeil's, a little older, obviously. And he's not, in my opinion, he doesn't have the abilities Pete has. But I think in terms of attitude, I don't think you're going to see the squirrel throwing his helmet all around the dugout and yelling and screaming. If that's the case, you're going to see a lot more of Acuna. You're going to see a lot more of Mauricio at second base. But Mendoza, I don't think he's going to tolerate that attitude. I mean, that's the thing about Buck. Buck let these guys, kind of be themselves. Mendoza, it's more about the culture, the team, the community, the vibe. And, that's just not going to be conducive to a positive culture. Hey, what's up, Richard? What's going on? The stream's almost over. You just got here. That's all right. We'll keep going for a little more. We'll keep going. We got a lot to talk about. I mean, a lot of good stuff happening. I mean, I don't want the Frankie Montas to kind of derail anybody. Frankie Montas, at the end of the day, was our fifth starter. He was our fifth starter. So let's put things into perspective. I just, at the end of the day, I didn't expect a dominating performance. I expected Frankie Montas to eat innings. So that's why I'm a little disappointed. But you know what? This is why, again, David Stearns gets paid the big bucks. And we've dealt with injuries, starting pitching injuries. We always deal with pitching injuries. Last year, almost everybody in our bullpen got injured. Kodai Senga was out the whole year. So, despite this being annoying, this is honestly nothing new. No, I was just double checking something. Oh shoot, Richard, you're having the procedure in the morning. Well, again, let me know what happens. I wish you luck with that. Yeah, no, I wish you luck with that. But how are we all feeling with Iglesias? Because I did a video the other day about Iglesias coming back, and I don't know, I almost got like almost a 50-50 about some people want Iglesias back, or maybe I divided. Maybe some people want Iglesias back. Some people don't want Iglesias because that would stunt the growth of the young kids. And some people want Iglesias back only as a bench option. So, here's my view about that. Adding a guy like Iglesias, I think he's a special guy. I think he's a special guy. I think he's going to be a future manager. I think he's got that type of talent. I think he was a guy that brought this team together. I really do. He brought this team together. So would I want him back to take time away from the young kids? Well, I look at it like this. I think that having a guy like that in the dugout could be invaluable to developing these young kids like Mauricio, like Acuna. And the thing is about him playing, Iglesias would only be playing over these guys if he's playing better than these guys. And if he's playing better than these guys, what better thing is there to show and push the guys to get better? Hey, this 35-year-old veteran, great guy, but, I think that would be extra motivation to the young kids. So the only way he'd be playing more than the young kids is if he's playing better. And there's so many opportunity for the young kids to play. Mark Vientos, he's going to need time off. He's not playing all the time. Or you could bring – my thing is, let's say Mauricio's killing it. Iglesias is killing it. You know what? You can always put Vientos at DH and then put Mauricio at third, Iglesias at second. If one of these guys could play the outfield, I mean, there are so many different combinations you could do if there's a hot hand. I mean, if everybody's hot, that's a good problem to have. If a lot of guys aren't hot, then okay, the guys who aren't hot, then those guys are going to be sitting on the bench. And that was something David Stearns did very well last year. If you weren't producing, you didn't play. If you were a guy who was put on this team in the bullpen, how many arms did we see get cut last year. So many arms got cut last year. So if you're going to be on this Mets roster and if you're going to be looking for playing time, you're going to have to produce. Case in point, McNeil, before he got hurt, from after the trade deadline till he got hurt in September, I think he got hurt around beginning of September. I think the fact that Iglesias took most of his time motivated the hell out of that guy. And the wins that we had in August, they were tough to come by. And a few wins that we did have were due to McNeil stepping it up. So I do think that it is a good philosophy. I do think it's a philosophy, and it all works itself out. Guys are going to get injured. Having a guy with that type of impact like Iglesias, to me, if it's feasible, if the two sides can work it out, if Iglesias is not looking for a ridiculous contract, I hear, the problem is he was looking for a multi-year deal at a pretty, decent number. That's not going to work. The guy's 35 years old, coming off a good 300 ABs. So I could see where the Mets and other teams would be hesitant. Yeah, Richard, I hear the thing about Sproat. And, if you look at my videos last year about Christian Scott, I said the same thing. I just don't think, I could be wrong. And you're right. Sproat is an older guy. He is older. He's 24, going to be 25 years old soon. So he is an older guy. That may come into the equation. But I think he's going to really have to really blow people away because, Richard, a point that we have to realize is he really did bad at AAA. Sproat last year did not do well at AAA, and that's the only hesitation that I think the Mets would have. I would think that he would have to prove himself at AAA first, but and then also you have all these other options right now. Is it something I would kind of want to do? Yeah, it's something I would want to do. I'd want to see our young ace. We literally have no youth in this whole rotation. We have one of the oldest rotations in all of baseball right now. So, yes, I'd want to see a young kid. So, a lot of people are saying right now that the roster for the New York Mets is really all set, like almost all set, especially on the offensive guys, because, you have a 26-man rotation and a lot of teams right now, they carry 13 pitchers. So if you have a 26-man roster, that would mean that you would carry 13 position players, 13 hitters. So, I mean, it doesn't really give you much. But, I don't know. I could see that kind of change. I could see where the Mets carry 14 hitters because your bench right now would be Luis Torrens, Tyrone Taylor, Starling Marte, and Nick Madrigal. I mean, literally, that's your roster right there if you carry 13 position players. And honestly, where do we have Brett Beatty, Luis Angel Acuna, and Ronnie Mauricio? So, I mean, if they decide to carry 14 hitters on the team, you can carry a Nick Madrigal and an Acuna. I mean, but here's, I mean, I was never crazy about Magical. I mean, if they got Magical over a guy like Iglesias, that was like something I'm like I wasn't so high on. At the end of the day, again, this is a long season. This is a long season. Okay, I was just looking what Andy Martino was saying about the Montas situation. And it's so funny. I mean, this is interesting. They asked Andy Martinez about Marcus Stroman. I don't know if anybody missed this, but Andy Martinez confirmed that the Mets are not interested in Marcus Stroman, even though he's supposedly on the trade block. I mean, I really don't blame the Mets on that situation because I know that Marcus Stroman, people who see Marcus Stroman's side and people who don't. But at the end of the day, it just seems like the guy's, he's always disgruntled about something. I mean, I like the guy in terms of his talent, but I just want the whole team pulling in one direction. I'd rather, obviously, if you're gonna get a Stroman, I'd rather have those starts go to a guy like Sproat. And then they also asked about the San Diego starters, and he also confirmed, like I said earlier, that he doesn't see them reopening talks at this point with San Diego. San Diego's price tag was apparently too high when they had the talks last week. So at this moment right now, nothing's going to happen. But I said, like I was saying, alluding to in the beginning of the video, the Mets are never going to operate under these desperate circumstances. So they're not going to all of a sudden, hey, San Diego, what do you want for Cease? Obviously, Montas just got injured. They're going to deal from a position of strength. So let's just say Tyler McGill has a good couple starts. He looks good. Sproat looks good. Sanga looks good. Then maybe the Mets might say, okay, maybe we can get another pitcher. And if the team tries to play hardball with us, hey, we got 6 or 7 guys who are already doing well. And then also, according to Martino, that is why he was kind of saying that a reunion with Quintana may not seem it may not seem that obvious. Like I said, Quintana made $13 million the last couple years. He's looking for a similar salary. So that the Mets are at the 110% mark right now. So that means they would have to pay him double. Is Quintana worth close to 30 million? I don't think so. But remember, folks, keep this in mind. Again, a guy like Spencer Turnbull, that is the guy who made $2 million last year. And he had a very good month of April starting, and he did good out of the bullpen. He got hurt, but if he's healthy now and he could pitch a good 2-3 months, that's potentially all we need him to fill in for. That might be an option that David Stern says, okay, that's not bad. That works for our situation. What's up, game? How's everything going? Folks, give me a second. I got to get more drink. I'll be right back. Uh, Whoa. All right. You know what it is? I put a workout bench right over here, and this is annoying the hell out of everything. All right, it's fixed. Oh, man, it's difficult to get iced tea these days. Yeah, Richard, you got the wrench next to your name. Game just here watching Dumpster Dave's signings fall apart. Well, I'll tell you, the Montas signing wasn't a signing that I'm like, oh great, yeah, we signed Montas to $34 million, 2-year deal. I wasn't crazy about that signing. In fact, that was one of the few signings where I'm like, I don't know, I'm not crazy about this one. But the other signings, I mean, Clay Holmes, I like that. I do. I see some potential, good potential there. I mean, the guy, he's got big build, big body. If there's somebody who can transition well to being a starter, I like that move. I do. Sean Manaea, bringing Sean Manaea back, I like that move. Jose Siri, getting a guy who hits 20 home runs, maybe not have the best contact, doesn't make good contact, but he's got an elite glove, $2 million deal. I like that move. And again, Pete Alonso, Juan Soto, I know that the deal and the talk is, oh, that's more of Steve Cohen. But, you got David Stearns behind the scenes, doing his, analysis, crunching numbers, this and that. All these moves were signed off by David Stearns as well. So, we're going to see how things work out. Griffin Canning, was I over the moon about that one? No. I mean, these guys were signings. These guys were players that I hope he's not going to play a significant amount of time. Like Griffin Canning was a spot starter, or maybe a long man. But we'll see what happens. We still got young kids in the minors with talent, as Richard alluded to. It would be ideal for a guy like Brandon Sproat to come up. So maybe if you had to go to a Canning or you had to go to a Blackburn, it would just be a few starts until Sproat is ready to come on the scene. Because I think that is a kid who has the potential to be a 2 or a 3 very soon. And he is 24, 25. So he's due to come up almost immediately. But I think it's going to be like a Christian Scott thing where you're going to wait until May. You're going to give him a couple starts in AAA first. All right. All right, let's see. I don't know. I don't know. Do we have any Yankee fans in here? I don't. We got 17 people. It's late. I know. I don't know if we have any Yankee fans in here. All right, let's assume we don't have any Yankee fans here. So last video, what I did, and if we have Yankee fans in here, let me know your opinion. So last video, if anybody didn't see my last video, I went around the diamond and I compared the Mets to the Yankees. So I went first base, catcher, second base, DH. Which team has the better player at said position? So yeah, I had a lot of disgruntled Yankee fans when I did this exercise, but hear me out. Hear me out. So let's start this. If you go first base for the Mets, first base for the Yankees. Mets, we know Pete Alonso. Yankees have Paul Goldschmidt. Paul Goldschmidt is going into his age 37 season. And I said, hands down, New York Mets win that position. Pete Alonso, case in point, I said if Goldschmidt hits 30 home runs, that would be a major, great job, clap, clap. The guy has been regressing over the last couple years, but big time, big time. If Pete Alonso hit 30 home runs, that would be a major issue. I think Pete Alonso at age 30 is going to have a great season hitting behind Soto. I don't think it's close. I think Pete Alonso takes that every day, any day over Paul Goldschmidt. So that was one position that I gave to the New York Mets. Now I'm just pulling up one thing. Okay. All right. Okay, so now this is where the controversy started. So I look at second base for the Yankees. Obviously, we'll go for the Mets after. I go for the second base. So if you go to the depth chart of the New York Yankees, and I haven't been following the Yankees as closely as Yankee fans are. I don't know what the hell's happening, who's going to win this second base thing. But if you go to MLB.com, if you go to a lot of these, mock depth charts or who have the depth chart, they have DJ LeMahieu as the starter at second, and they have Jazz Chisholm as the starter at third base, right? So I'm comparing the teams like that. So I says, okay, Jeff McNeil's better than DJ LeMahieu, older veteran for older veteran, but Jeff McNeil is still better. And then, they have some youngsters to back up at backup at second base. So they have Jazz Chisholm as a backup, and then they have Oswaldo Cabrera and Oswald Peraza. And then in my opinion, I said, I'd rather have Ronnie Mauricio, and I'd rather have Luis Angel Acuna. So I said the Mets are better at second base as well. All right, so that's 2-0 going to the Mets. Then you go around the diamond, we're up to shortstop. And I don't really got to say much. It's Francisco Lindor, number 2 in MVP last year, one of the best two-way players in the game compared to Anthony Volpe. I don't even got to talk much about that position. Now we're at 3-0 Mets. Then we go to third base, and everywhere I look at, Jazz Chisholm is starting at third base. Mark Vientos played 450 games, and in 450 games had better stats in almost every category than Jazz Chisholm. So I said, all right, Mets sweep around the diamond. 4-0, 4-0. Okay, so let's continue this exercise. Left field, they have Jason Dominguez, the often injured youngster, against Brandon Nimmo. At this point in his career, he's not Brandon Nimmo. Brandon Nimmo takes that position. Okay, 5-0 in favor of the Mets. Now you go to center field. This one I gave the New York Yankees. I gave the New York Yankee fans. I was so gracious. Bellinger at this point is better than Jose Siri. There you go. 5-1. All right, I forgot catcher. Catcher, you got Austin Wells and Francisco Alvarez. Francisco Alvarez, in my opinion, had, it throughout their major league experience, Austin Wells only played a little over 300 ABs. I need to see more from Austin Wells. Francisco Alvarez in his rookie year had 25 home runs, has had a very great positive impact on the pitching staff. I mean, okay, maybe that's a toss-up, but my Mets bias comes in. I give that to the Mets as well. Center field goes to the Yankees, and now you have the right field matchup. You have the right field slugfest. Juan Soto versus Aaron Judge. Aaron Judge is coming off of one of the most dominating years in almost MLB history. He's coming off of his best year of his career. But at the end of the day, folks, he's 33. He's 33. So do I expect a guy like that to all of a sudden, I mean, unless he's on steroids, I mean, maybe not say that. I don't want to throw that out there. I don't know that. But, I would assume Mother Nature would take over at some point. Could he be a freak of nature and continue this trajectory? Yes, but a 26-year-old Juan Soto who is still ascending, and I got to assume the 30-year-old is descending, I would say that is a tie or a close matchup. DH, right now, the Mets, I think we're still going to improve our DH situation. Giancarlo Stanton is better than Jesse Winker. So if you go across the diamond, the Mets, I grade it as Mets better at 6 positions, Yankees better at 3, because I ultimately gave the New York Yankees the Aaron Judge. I put it from a tie. I said, all right, you know what? At this moment, I didn't see that decline in Aaron Judge. I graded it 6-3 in favor of the Mets around the diamond. So, I mean, then I got comments from Yankee fans saying that I literally said every position is dominated by the Mets. I didn't say that, but, that was my end of the analysis. And then the big problem is everybody's telling me Jazz Chisholm is playing second base. I don't know. I got to see it. I see him. I slotted to play third base. But that was the drama. My next video, I'm probably going to compare starting rotations or the bullpen. But, frankly, I'm not afraid of the Yankees starting rotation, folks. Last year, we got a good, close look at the starting rotation of the Yankees. What happened last year? The Mets went 4-0 against the Yankees and outscored the Yankees 36-17. We didn't just beat the New York Yankees. We pummeled the New York Yankees. So that New York Yankees pitching that's, big bad, Garrett Cole, their ace, the Mets own Garrett Cole. Own him. So, Max Fried, yeah, that might be a bit of an upgrade because Max Fried has had historically a pretty decent career against the New York Mets. But, he's not a guy that I'm ultra scared of. But, we got to see what happens. But that last video apparently stirred a bit of controversy. And, some of these videos you got to be a little careful about because as Richard could attest to, some of these people, they go crazy. They start threatening your life. It's funny. I mean, we're just talking about sports here. I would say that's fair. I mean, our pitching right now, starting pitching is definitely lacking. I wouldn't be that delusional to think that, our rotation is superior, despite our matchup being better. They have Stroman's going to be their 6th. They got some good talent. Luis Gil, winning Rookie of the Year. That was a guy I didn't expect to be that good. Clark Smith, those two right there, I did not expect to be that good after they traded away Michael King. So, the Yankees have had really good performances from those two guys. They really stepped up. And then they got their guys that they spent a lot of money on, Carlos Rodon, Garrett Cole, and Max Fried. Me as a Mets fan going into that series, Carlos Rodon, I'm not afraid of. And Garrett Cole, I'm not afraid of. So, but we'll see. Dodgers fans are worse. I don't know. I don't know about that. Maybe it's because Yankee fans, like, we live with, Yankee fans are in this, same vicinity we share a city with. But I've met some pretty reasonable Dodgers fans. In fact, we have a couple, people like members on the channel. Like they seem pretty reasonable. Although, all right, Richard, you probably are right, because during the World Series, when I was doing a couple of those videos, Yankees, Dodgers, there were a lot of Dodgers fans. Even though I was favoring them over the Yankees, I wasn't favoring the Dodgers enough. Hmm. All right. So at the end of the day, we're gonna be wrapping up soon. So to answer the video, the question video. So in the title, I put quick fix or major setback. I think it's quite obvious. It's not a major setback. It would only be a major setback if this was the beginning of other guys getting hurt. So if Kodai Senga would get hurt, or of other guys, David Peterson, if the other injury prone guys begun to get hurt, Frankie Montas, like I said, was there to eat up innings. And, obviously he showed a little improvement in Milwaukee. He was there to build on that success. Okay, that's where I would see it being a major setback. Quick fix. Is it a quick fix? Since he was our number 5, and it's not a Kodai Senga and it's not a Sean Manaea getting hurt, I would say that, it's at this point with nobody else getting hurt, this could be potentially a quick fix, especially if they decide to get a Quintana. If they decide to get a Quintana, and even though Andy Martino rules it out because of money and because the Mets are already over the 110. If the Mets see Frankie Montas as potentially being done for way more than the 8 weeks, I could see the Mets, paying Quintana, $8 million, $7 million, because what are you going to do? You're not going to have a reliable fifth starter, or you're not going to have that depth in case a Senga gets injured. And then you're going to be screwed if you have to rely on your 7th, 8th, 9th options so early in the season. So I think if the Mets doctors deem this as being a lot bigger issue, of course, I don't see that coming out right now. But Kodai Senga, we got to admit, last year, Kodai Senga was out way more than initially suspected. I believe when he got injured in March, people projected him being back in late May. That was his earliest projection. If you remember, folks, he came back right before the trade deadline. So I think that was late July. So he came back literally 2 months after he was initially projected. So these timelines right now, I look at it with a grain of salt. So if the internal Mets suspect this being a season-long issue, you gotta go out and make sure you get a solid piece. Tyler McGill hasn't proven it. Griffin Canning hasn't proven it. All you guys haven't proven it. Brandon Sproat, I mean, you don't want to heap that type of pressure on him. I don't know. I that would be kind of rough one. That would be a rough one to say. Go out there, make 30 starts. It just would be tough. So I think the Mets would have to be forced and lucky right now that a guy like Quintana, a guy who pitched with your team the last 2 years and it has been fairly successful, is still on the market, and he can pitch in New York. So again, you gotta rely on your experts to give you the right information so that David Stearns can make his recommendation to Steve Cohen and they can invest accordingly in the resources out there. All right, so we're going to wrap it up. We answered the question. I apologize. It took an hour and 16 minutes to get there, but we had to go over other things. So, yeah, no, it's going to be fun. I think the first spring training game is the 22nd. So the first spring training game for the New York Mets is the 22nd. So I'm excited to see how that goes. And I'm excited to see Juan Soto. I'm super excited to see this lineup. I'm thinking about heading over to Port St. Lucie. I'm a couple hours away, luckily. So maybe one of those days I'm going to head out there. But all right, well, thank you so much. I appreciate each and every one of you. On your way out, if you could help out the channel, and even when you watch the videos, just please hit the like button as much as possible. It does help out. It really does. I do appreciate that. And thank you as always. It's over 2 o'clock, past 2 o'clock in the morning. So thank you for giving me your time and for hanging out. I appreciate every one of you. Have a great night. And, everyone have a good sleep.